Here's Laken Riley.
Yes.
Her murder, her horrific murder at the hands of this illegal migrant who was also unlawfully paroled in the United States. Her death, not an actual issue?
It's a tragedy.
But not an actual issue?
Migrant crime is much less of an issue than U.S. citizen committed crime.
Not an actual issue? Those are your words. Her death, not an actual issue. I just want to get no, you say.
Of course.
The spokesman for the minority party is advising the Senate that the Laken Riley Act is a bad idea and we ought to stop it. The spokesman for the minority party is saying that Laken Riley's death and migrant crime is not an actual issue. I can't frankly believe that I am hearing these words. You said it's not an actual issue. I read you the quote.
Laken Riley's death was not an actual issue.
You said that the murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime. You put it in quotation marks, square quotes, like it's an actual issue.
Today's Senate hearing was anything but ordinary. Senator Josh Hawley, never one to shy away from tough questions, put Mr. Isaacson in the hot seat over a tragedy that's shaken the nation, the murder of 12-year-old Travis Wolfe by an illegal migrant. Hawley kicked things off by challenging Isaacson on his recent statements about migrant crime. Now here's the thing. Isaacson had downplayed the impact of crimes like the one that took Travis's life, suggesting that the Laken Riley Act, which is meant to crack down on migrant crime, wasn't an actual issue. Hawley wasn't having it. He pressed Isaacson, point blank, asking how anyone could ignore such a devastating loss, especially when it's tied so directly to our nation's border policies. The Laken Riley Act itself? It's controversial, but Hawley made his case. We need stronger laws to make sure violent offenders aren't slipping through the cracks. He even proposed an amendment focused specifically on tragedies like Travis's, making it clear that for him, this isn't just politics, it's about real people, real families, and real safety. Then the conversation heated up around the Remain in Mexico policy. Isaacson had called it a program of death. But Hawley flipped the narrative, arguing that the policy actually kept people safer, both migrants and Americans, by stopping dangerous crossings and limiting cartel activity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for calling this hearing. Mr. Isaacson, if I could just start with you. In March of 2024, you wrote, "The murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime like it's an actual issue." That'd be Laken Riley you were talking about?
Laken Riley was an unusual case.
Yeah, here, let's have a look. Here's Laken Riley.
Yes.
Her murder, her horrific murder at the hands of this illegal migrant who was also unlawfully paroled in the United States. Her death, not an actual issue?
It's a tragedy.
But not an actual issue?
Migrant crime is much less of an issue than U.S. citizen committed crime.
Not an actual issue? Those are your words. Her death, not an actual issue. I just want to get no, you say.
Of course it's an issue. It's a tragedy.
So what do you mean by your post? It's not an actual issue, meaning we shouldn't be paying attention to it. Senate's wasting its time this week on the Laken Riley Act that would address the circumstances of her murder. What's your advice to us? We just discontinue those proceedings now?
I think the Laken Riley Act could do a lot of harm. It would allow me to say, oh, this person shoplifted, and that would be enough probable cause to get somebody deported.
Interesting. You're here, who invited you to this committee hearing today, Mr. Isaacson?
The minority party.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're here as a spokesman for the minority party. I just want to make sure the record's clear on this. The spokesman for the minority party is advising the Senate that the Laken Riley Act is a bad idea and we ought to stop it. The spokesman for the minority party is saying that Laken Riley's death and migrant crime is not an actual issue. I can't frankly believe that I am hearing these words. You said it's not an actual issue. I read you the quote.
Laken Riley's death was not an actual issue.
You said that the murder of a nursing student in Georgia has a lot of people on the right talking about migrant crime. You put it in quotation marks, square quotes, like it's an actual issue. She's dead because of migrant crime, right? Let's try something else. Here, do you know who this is? Do you know who this young man is?
I do not.
Travis Wolfe, 12 years old, from my state, murdered by an illegal migrant who was also, like Jose Ibarra, illegally paroled by the last administration.
Is your expectation that zero migrants?
Let me tell you what my expectation is that those who commit crimes in this country will be appropriately dealt with. And that we should not be allowing migrants who commit crimes into this country, and that, yes, migrant crime that kills people like Travis Wolfe, whose death was shocking, whose death is inexplicable, indefensible. I actually do think, yes, I think it's an actual, wait a minute, it's my time, Mr. Isaacson. I actually think, and I want the record to be clear on this, that migrant crime is a real issue. I think the Lake and Riley Act is absolutely necessary. In fact, I propose an amendment to the Lake and Riley Act that will cover people like Travis Wolf. I think that ICE ought to be required to detain those illegal migrants who commit violent crimes against children, like Travis Wolf. And yes, I happen to think, as a former prosecutor, I happen to think that their violent murders are actual issues. And the fact that you would say otherwise, sit here and advise the Senate that the Lake and Riley Act is a bad idea, that the whole thing is not an actual issue, tell us what, made up, I think is outrageous. I think it's absolutely outrageous. And the fact that you were invited here to give this testimony is stunning to me, I have to say. Absolutely stunning to me. Mr. Kuchinski, let me just ask you, something else that Mr. Isaacson has said is that the Remain in Mexico policy was a program of death. A program of death. Is that your experience, having seen it implemented? A program of death?
As part of implementing it, my answer would be no. It was quite the opposite. And as I said in my statement, that the deterrent effect for illegal aliens to come that was gained by the migrant protection protocols, Remain in Mexico program, prevented a lot more abuse, child abuse, abuse of women on the journey, and death along the way than any of the crimes that occurred addressed to the people where the people in Remain in Mexico were the victims. So anytime we have illegal immigration going on, we have victimization of that population. It would be my view, and I think the dollars play it out, especially as you've seen since 2019, that the idea that the cartels benefited from the Remain in Mexico program is relatively ludicrous compared to the alternative. And the alternative we've lived with the last 4 years has been the greatest enriching of the most evil, vicious people in the Western Hemisphere in the history of this hemisphere.
Yeah, I wish the Remain in Mexico program had still been in effect. When the killer of Travis Wolf crossed the border and was paroled illegally into the country, he might still be alive today. And if that's not an actual issue, I don't know what is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He pointed out that when these protections are stripped away, it's not just policies that change, it's lives that are lost. At the heart of the debate was a single haunting question. How many more innocent lives have to be lost before Washington gets serious about border security? Hawley was relentless, calling out what he sees as hypocrisy from lawmakers who, in his view, are willing to downplay these tragedies in exchange for political points. He said it's time to stop ignoring the consequences of lax immigration laws, because behind every statistic, there's someone like Travis, whose future was stolen. By the end of the hearing, the frustration in Hawley's voice was impossible to miss. He drew a line in the sand. Migrant crime isn't a talking point, it's a crisis. The Lake and Riley Act, he argued, is a step toward accountability and real border security, something American families desperately need. This hearing put the spotlight on just how divided Congress is over the question of who gets to stay and who should go. But for Senator Hawley, there's no room for ambiguity. The stakes are too high and the tragedies are too real. If you agree it's time for tougher action on migrant crime, hit that subscribe button for more Senate updates and deep dives into the issues that matter.
Thanks for watching The Left Wing Critic, where politics meets passion and we hold power to account. If you're tired of corporate spin and right-wing noise, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and join the movement. The left doesn't stay silent, and neither do we.